Bring in former Supreme Allied Commander at NATO, retired four-star Navy Admiral James Stavridis. Admiral, it's always a pleasure to see you. He is NBC's chief international analyst. Just thinking, what are your thoughts on, let's talk about, for example, Putin heading to North Korea. Why do you think he'd be going there now?
For exactly the reasons that all of us are feeling pretty good at the moment, and that is because the massive tranche of aid from the United States, about 60 billion, Jose, as you know, matched, and even a little bit more from the Europeans. All of that weaponry is now hitting the battlefield. You're already seeing Russia having to give up some of the gains they've made in the course of the spring. So Putin recognizes that although he was on the front foot through the spring, now with the new aid flowing in, he's going to have to find additional sources of weaponry. That's problem number one for him. And then problem number two is manpower. He is chewing up his army, losing a lot of troops. He won't get troops from North Korea, but he will find the weapons to put in the hands. That might reduce his troop losses. That's why he is really working it with North Korea right now.
Admiral, talking about his need for additional, weaponry and manpower and assistance for that manpower. We're also following the big issue of a Russian nuclear-powered submarine and surface-to-war ships are in Cuba after arriving there last week. At one time, I know you were in charge of Southern Command. What are your thoughts on that? I'm sort of split in my view here. On the one hand, Russian ships passing through the Americas, notably through the Caribbean, fairly routine, Jose, you know that. We'll see them in and out of Cuban ports. They'll probably jump down and see the dictator Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. They might come over to Central America and pay a port call. It's only 3 ships. We have a whole fleet there, the U.S. Navy's 4th Fleet. So we'll track them, we'll follow them. On the other hand, we ought to recognize this is Putin responding to the U.S. saying to the Ukrainians, use our weapons, U.S. weapons, inside Russia. So Putin is sending a little bit of a signal here that, hey, I've got friends near you. I could use weapons from their bases in Cuba. So it's a bit of a mixed signal. Final thought, Jose, back to manpower. As you probably know, Putin is recruiting Cubans to join the Russian army and go fight on the front lines in Ukraine. I hope the Cuban people are smart enough to reject that. The only issue is, Admiral, the Cuban people don't have the right to reject or not reject anything when they have a system in place for 63 plus years. It doesn't give them voice, ni voz ni voto, in anything they do. And meanwhile, Admiral, and I mean, again, you know this better than anybody else, we're monitoring this shakeup in Israel's government. What do you see there?
I think without question, this is bad news for Netanyahu because he's lost the 2 most capable members of that cabinet. Only had 5 people in it. The 2 who left are former General Benny Gantz, the head of the Israeli Defense Forces, and former General Gadi Eshkanat, who also was a head of the Israeli Defense Force. So all that uniformed experience, which I think was helping guide the military side of this campaign, is departing in frustration with Netanyahu. He had to dissolve it because his far right, which is the very dangerous side of his coalition to any kind of peace effort or ceasefire, would have demanded those seats. So this is bad news, not only for Netanyahu, but in my view, bad news for the already slim chances of a ceasefire.
Admiral James Stavridis, always a pleasure. I thank you so much. It's always great seeing you. Up next.